welcome to Follow. On today's episode, we have Arul Kacker. Arul has been the city lead for Sofarbombay for the last 2 years, and he's helped put together almost 30 shows in the span of the last 2 years, just ranging from a wide spectrum of genres. And we are very, very glad to have him on the show today. So, Arul, welcome to Follow, man.
Thank you so much for having me.
How do you
really
feel?
Appreciate it.
How do you feel being on the best podcast in India?
I mean, it's just, honestly, I woke up in the morning and I was just so intimidated. I was frightened of meeting you guys, but I think I'll live.
We are very glad that you took out some time. And,
thank you so much. We've been talking about this for a while.
Yeah,
I'm
once
glad
you
I
got
could
here,
do
you
this.
must have been like, maybe they should be frightened of me.
I mean, hopefully Jayesh has already been frightened of me for a while. But no, it's I've been wanting to do this for a while. He mentioned it to me, almost maybe a month, 2 months ago, something like that.
Yeah. So what songs are we shooting for the first band?
None.
So weird,
Anymore.
right? Like that's the
man.
usual conversation. Yo, who's playing today? What
It's-
songs are we shooting? Okay, cool, yeah.
It's
Are
still-
the lights set up? Yeah.
It still feels so weird, man. Like, especially now that like other people are gonna start doing the shows and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Just it feels it feels good in some ways. It feels like this plant that I grew and like it's now gone and somebody else will trim it and snip it in another
Right.
way.
But it's your baby.
Yeah, but like I always see what I did and what we all did as a team in everything that came from that. So really, really happy about those times. It was
Sweet.
3 years and 40 shows, by the way. We're
Ooh.
close enough. Yeah.
So straight up, we know that you were running Sofar for 3 years almost. So where did that step even begin? Where did Arul Kacker come into the music scene as the lead for Sofar? Everyone would have those questions where how do I get this? How do I get this role? Who do I call? Who do I contact? What is that first touch point that you
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I joined Sofar, it was March 2016. I hadn't even graduated college yet. And I had always sort of been into music. I was a musician growing up, learned how to play guitar and sing, things like that. Learned how to record, my way around mics and cables and DAWs. And initially, I think I wanted to be an audio engineer. That was my thing. I love, like I was a nerd. I loved science and I loved physics and all of that stuff. And I loved music. So I was like, okay, this seems like
The sweet spot.
a good fit. But it just wasn't me. Like I realized that I was far more adept at being out there and working with people and not really being a studio rat. As much as I enjoyed being in the studio. So I was looking for things, I was graduating and I was like, man, I need, once I get out of college, I need to like hit the ground running and start doing things I really love.
Right.
And a friend of mine called me. She was studying music business in Leeds at the time. And she was like, hey, I went for this thing today. It was like a house gig at my friend's apartment. It was really cool. And, I'm moving back in a couple of months to Bangalore. And I'm thinking of talking to these people and seeing if they want to do something in India. And I said, yeah, that sounds really cool. And they're like, yeah, and they shoot like videos and stuff like that. So like I can send you some links and, they've worked
Right.
with like Bastille and Napalm and stuff. I was like,
Okay.
that sounds pretty tight,
Yeah.
So this was, back then there were not as many cities even worldwide. I mean, in India there was
Right.
nothing. But like there's only about, I think, 150 cities worldwide. Now
Right.
there's like 400 plus. So it was a fairly tight-knit community starting out. And me and Prasna, who's a friend of mine, like both decided that she's going to kick off Bangalore and I'm going to kick off Bombay. And so I interviewed with them over Skype and they kind of just gauge, what kind of person you are, what your interests are, what your motivations are, which I think are the most important things.
Right, yeah, of course.
And whether you're a good judge of talent and, your city's audiences.
Yeah.
And they kind of like hold your hand through the review process for the first 3 or 4 months, just kind of see if you get it,
Right.
that you're not
Right.
like, it's like, okay, what kind of bands do you book? And you're like, Scribe. And they'll be like, I mean, like if they were to do an acoustic set, sure, may work, but they want to see that you're able to take risks and do diverse things, but
Right.
within the confines of the
Yeah.
environment that
and
you're
the
restricted to.
guidelines and the idea of what
Aesthetics
Sofar
as
is.
well.
Exactly,
Mhm.
and at the same time, like imbibe your own city's characteristics into it. You know, like if you're in Milan, you'll see a lot more classical music.
Right.
If you're in LA, you see a lot more indie rock and things like that. So
Right.
you know, what was important to them was them getting the impression from you that you truly understand, you know, your city and
Right.
what people want to hear
Mhm.
and stuff like that. So thankfully it went really well. You know, I have great friends in so far cities around the world. I've emceed shows in London and New York. You know, hung out with them so many times, and it's amazing. The best thing that ever happened to me.
I just want to go a bit back.
Yeah.
And like,
Okay.
when did you actually, when was it the first moment when you got exposed to music and you started falling in love with it?
Well, growing up, like we had like a tape deck, you know. So
Yeah.
Dad would play like Pink Floyd, and you know
Mm.
we'd listen to like Venga Boys and
Mm.
like Westlife, Boyzone, Backstreet Boys, that
Backstreet
sort of thing.
Boys.
I mean, like what else are you supposed to
Yeah.
listen to when you're 7 years old? But like my first, like it'll always be when I heard "In the End" by Linkin Park because my brother
Yeah.
played it for me,
Ah.
and I was like, okay, am I okay to curse? I was like, what the fuck? Like I was 7 years old. I obviously didn't say those words, but it was the exact same feeling, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because when you're listening to like, okay, the Beatles and Boyzone, all of this stuff, it's like it's a similar palette in, you know, there's vocal performances, there's a chorus, and all of that. It was my first time like hearing a distorted guitar,
Ah.
right?
Mm.
Like, and I was just like, these are different emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like all I'd been hearing so far was like love and longing and you know, like yesterday, like kind of like somber type stuff.
Yeah,
And this was actual like angst and anger and you know, just these feelings that I hadn't felt yet.
Right.
So for this music to invoke that in me, I was like, what is that? Like I haven't
Yeah.
felt like angst yet. Like I'm fucking 9 years old, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, but yeah, that's the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
That's
It
the moment.
opened the door,
It's a
definitely.
hybrid theory. For
Yeah,
sure.
So like, I remember when I was like much younger, I was exposed to a lot of new music at Planet M.
Yeah, of course.
They had those pillars and they had these
Word is born, dude.
CD players
Headphones
around it.
yeah,
and
you just go
and
there
you
and
just-
I've been kicked out of Planet M's, dude. Because like I would never buy anything, and I would spend the whole day there.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
I
What do you
mean,
expect?
Like the
man?
new
I haven't
Eminem
bought
record
anything,
comes
though.
out. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just looked like I was gonna steal something, but like Eminem show came out, you know, all of those. I
Yeah,
mean, of
yeah,
course,
yeah,
like
yeah.
from Hybrid Theory, then it was like Limp Bizkit and Eminem and. I'm sure Nickelback had a part to play somewhere. Chevelle,
Yeah, of course.
sure.
Sum 41,
Right.
Blink 182,
Yeah.
you know, all of these bands, and this was like the peak of the CD era, where
Right.
you know 50 Cent could come out with a record, and in a week he had sold, you know, like 4 million records.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Million CDs, you know, you
CDs,
couldn't
yeah.
buy, you couldn't download it, you couldn't stream it, you had to
Yeah.
go out of your house,
Yeah.
go to a store and buy a CD, and that would happen millions of times in the first week, which was, you know, that was mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
That was the kind of like, it was just the peak of pop culture.
Yeah,
At
I
that
missed that era, man. Actually,
It's
just
you know
having
absolutely.
music like tangibly, like you can just touch it. This is a CD. This is a cassette that I have.
Yeah.
You know.
No, even like yeah, I get that. I mean, obviously, like I collect records and CDs and things like that. So yeah, I do relate. But for me, it was more the value that I felt music had. That you would spend like $15 or whatever
Mhm.
the
Yeah,
price
yeah.
was, like $500
Yeah.
on,
Or even
on
make
a
that
CD.
effort to step out.
Yeah, and
go
that's all
buy
you
it.
would get.
Yeah.
Like it's not like you pay $500 and you get everybody's discography ever.
Yeah.
Like you get one album and you might not even like it.
Yeah.
You don't even know what it sounds like yet.
But if you like
So-
it, you just keep listening to it over and over
Exactly.
and just like.
And you also
digest,
end up
absorb
listening
so
to the
much,
whole
right?
track and like you
Yeah.
have this
Yeah.
entire story, because now I don't think there's any recent release where I've actually gone through the entire album.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you just
I feel
you know
like-
a few good ones and then you just play those on
Yeah, and that's by design, you know, because the way music is created, especially commercially now, is very algorithmic. They know that okay, we need a song with Ed Sheeran, we need a song with like Travis Scott for that demographic. We need a sad, sexy song with like Chris Brown, and like that's the whole game, right? But
yeah.
back then it wasn't that easy to predict what would happen, and
Correct.
I still tell people like younger than me, if you weren't there, you will never truly understand why I love music if you weren't there when the club came out. Because In the Club was the biggest song I have heard in my life. Like, think Despacito.
It's definitely out there in those.
It was
top,
like
top
all
three,
of
top
those
five.
songs like put together. It was
Yeah.
like you couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah, people
without
still
listening.
played and everyone
Yeah.
goes crazy.
Without
Yeah.
listening in the club.
Yeah.
In the club and Hey Ya. were
Yeah.
outcasts.
Yeah.
Like, both of those songs
Yeah.
were just like they were game changers, man.
Yeah.
And you know that's what really got me interested in the business side of things. But you know, obviously, I was a huge fan of music growing up. Still am.
So how was it putting together the first Sofar show you did? For Sofar Bombay?
I mean, it was a wreck because I didn't even know anybody would show up, right? Because the first time you do it, the whole pattern is such that you send out invites. People apply for the show. You send out invites to a number of those people corresponding to the venue size, and they have to confirm their attendance, and then they get the address, and then they show up.
Right.
And like right off the bat, I was like, who's gonna do that, right? Because like somebody could tell me, yo, come tonight, it's free.
Yeah.
And I would kind of be like, I don't know if I feel like it, you know,
Yeah.
I'll decide at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
So I was like, if that's the way people think about it, why would anyone show up for this thing?
Right.
Especially if I haven't told them who's playing.
Who's playing, where it is.
You know, I haven't told them. I mean, I've told them general direction, so they know where they're going. It was Vasova.
Yeah.
But it could be like an open mic night almost, and like people will come there and just be like, you know, this was not great. So the priority for me was right out the bat to have a great lineup for the first show, or at least the first 2 or 3 shows, because that would build trust in the audience that you know they're able to secure that kind of talent, and if they aren't, it'll be someone of equivalent caliber who we haven't heard yet. So to build that trust was super important to us starting out. So Warren was, is very supportive of like what we were trying to do. So Warren was there. There was a Nigerian singer-songwriter named Kafayat Qadri.
Okay.
There was Ink of Bard, a band I found on YouTube.
Okay.
They had 3 videos with like 200 views each. And like that was my favorite thing right from the start. Finding bands that like nobody had heard or I felt like I could provide something to. Because like I'm not really providing Warren with anything other than a great time.
Yeah.
But like with these bands, it was like a huge deal.
Yeah. Also playing on the same bill as Warren.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I structured it so that Warren played before them.
Yeah.
Which was
So
I had the
there's no,
freedom.
like,
I had the
headliner or
freedom
anything.
to do that. But
Yeah.
I was like, okay, Warren's gonna open for you technically.
Right.
Right. And some people obviously like it gets to them that kind of pressure. But if you get that opportunity, it's up to you to make the most of it.
Yeah, but-
And last act of the evening was Sid. So that was 3 years later we're like brothers. And, obviously I manage him.
Right.
So yeah, that was a great show, and funnily enough, we overbooked, we over invited, we called like I think 85 people for like a 65 cap venue, thinking okay, even if some people drop out, like it'll still be like kind of full
Right.
or whatever, and like more than 85 people showed up. Like I don't know where the others came from,
The
but
plus
it
ones,
was
man.
like no, it was like just people who were like just come.
Just come, man.
And like we weren't equipped for like dealing with that at the
Right,
time.
yeah.
We didn't even anticipate that happening. So it was just like that. Everybody was like knees to the chest, arms in,
Yeah.
and
But they were all
wow.
there for that show.
Wow,
yeah.
dude! Like and then like just seeing that was like okay, like if that's our first time for like a concept that hasn't been seen here before, we'll be okay.
Right.
And
yeah.
it was great. And I was obviously freaking out because you go outside, everyone's smoking pot. It's like, oh, the cops are gonna come. Yeah, like I'm like I don't want to get busted. I'm responsible. I'll go to jail. Like nobody went to jail.
But
It's all good.
networking must have been key starting off, right?
Absolutely.
Because I mean, it's not just the people who come, but the artists, people to organize it, you
Absolutely.
need a lot of credibility and
Absolutely.
trust,
I
right?
didn't
So
know anybody.
How yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I
How did
didn't
you-
know anybody in the city because, when I left for college, I went to engineering school in Manipal. I was too young to really know people. Like, I would go for gigs, like I'd see Zero or Scribe or whoever. Like, I didn't really know anyone. So when I came back and I started doing this, like, a huge part of that for me starting out was just going to gigs. So, sure, with the first, I had help with people in my team who kind of knew people, stuff like that. But for the first couple of shows, but I knew that I had to learn and I had to develop a network and I had to do it quickly. So I would be going for like 3 to 4 shows a week. After work, I was working at Deloitte at the time.
Okay.
So after work, I would go to Antisocial, which opened around the same time.
Okay.
Antisocial, Tuning Fork.
Blue Frog probably was still around.
Blue Frog
then,
was
yeah.
still around.
There's Ibar around.
Ibar
Oh,
was still
man.
around. Yeah, Ibar was
Yeah.
still around. All of these venues, I would just go there and just be there. Just be seen there, talk to people, like see the show. If I like the band, go to them afterwards and say, hey, I'm Arul, I like your stuff. I also do this. Can we exchange like email IDs or whatever?
Right.
Just be, friendly and warm and understand. Like it's kind of like approaching a cat. You put your finger in front of their nose and they're just like
Yeah.
that, and I was like, oh, okay. So it's kind of the same thing. Like you go to them, it's like, I'm not here to fuck you. I'm not here to like screw you over money or anything like that. I'm here because I care, and so because of that, I came all the way from Powai after work just to sit here and watch you play, and I like you, so I'm here to
Right.
tell you, and that's all there is to this.
Yeah.
It's chill, and just developing that trust
Yeah.
between ourselves and the artist.
I mean, it's still
was
not as
super
easy as it
important.
sounds, man.
Oh no,
Yeah.
it's not. Part of it, of course, like I appreciate that I have like some amount of innate skill with it, but like it had to
Sure.
be honed over time.
Mhm.
Just because there's such a vast variety of people
Right.
as
Right,
artists.
right.
There's rappers and there's like shy singer-songwriters, and then there's the more famous ones, the Warrens and the Pratiks, and all these people. So you have to kind of like deal with them in different ways,
Exactly.
with consistent amount of respect, but like sort of like you need to dance around certain things and make sure you're not sort of overstepping any boundaries and things like that. So that's just something that I think you need to do as much as possible of, and like you just learn it
Right,
subconsciously.
right.
Did you learn this the hard way?
Yeah, I mean, I just had to do it. Like I wasn't even thinking of it at the time.
But did you blow some things up as well while you were sort of trying to hone
I'm
this
sure.
skill?
I'm sure.
And then what happens of that? Like once something's blown, like can it be fixed or like?
Yeah. But especially like if. So the thing is that my point right from the start was that we're in this for the long run. I don't want to do 3 shows and stop, right?
Yeah.
I want to do this for as long as I am in this city.
Right.
So if that's the case, then I'll get another chance. We'll sort of cross, each other's paths further down the line,
Right.
and things will make more sense. They'll understand that I didn't mean badly, or that I wasn't a weirdo, or whatever the conclusion of that first bad encounter was. And yeah, that generally worked out over time. I mean, there are a few people where it's kind of like there's a little bit of friction and stuff like that, but you can't help that. There's always going to be people who don't trust you, don't like what you do, don't think you have ulterior motives, and so on and so forth, and that's fine. I mean, it doesn't bother me. Yeah.
Do you think if you didn't have your car, would Sofar be the same?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It would not exist.
So I've been
I would have given
working
up.
with Sofar for like a year now. And you know what is Sofar Bombay? His car.
It is. That's the
he's
city
carrying, he's just like driving around the city with everything in his car.
Yeah.
And he just shows up to a show with everything: the mics, lights, cameras. The artist, just come. Posters,
Sometimes I
come.
bring the artists.
Audience, come. What do you need, man?
No, that's for sure. And that just came from like right at the start, having the feeling that firstly, like I had a small team to begin with.
Right.
And I felt responsible for the whole, because I felt like if I'm the leader, if something fails, I need to be able to plug that.
Right.
If somebody makes a mistake or isn't able to complete a task, I need to make sure that gets done. I can't just be like, oh, it didn't get done. Like
Right.
I felt like that was my responsibility. So early on, I would pick up the lights, as you know, I'd pick up the sound, I'd pick up Ayan, our sound engineer. I would make sure everything was there. For a long time, I took care of a lot of responsibilities. You joined later on, but
Right.
I would kind of oversee who was on cameras and things like that. I would personally visit each venue before a show happened there to sign off on it.
Okay.
Only later on did I eventually have a team that I could trust, and I felt like whatever they choose, I'm gonna show up there and be like, yeah, this is kind of nice. I'm happy to do this.
Right.
But to begin with, like I felt like I needed to have my fingers in all those pies
Everything.
to make sure that everything was as high quality as I could make it. I didn't want people to be able to assume that we were all volunteers. That was the plan. People should get the impression that we're all getting paid shit tons of money for this, right? Like, because it needs to look like that, it needs to sound like that, it needs to feel like that.
Right.
That just high quality production and programming and all of that. I wanted people to be able to walk into a house and see Tajdar Junaid's band,
Right.
right? And be like, what?
Mm.
And like, honestly, like that's one of the proudest moments for me, because nobody knew he had moved to Bombay.
Right.
People thought he was in Calcutta. And What Color Is Your Raindrop was sort of gestating in people's minds, a lot of people listening to it. So I just reached out to him, and he was like, yeah, I live in Malad. I was like, word. And he played their show, and it blew people's minds because it was his first Bombay show.
Right. Yeah, that was a kick-ass
And that's
show.
the thing, right? Like, I was just always trying to find new ways to surprise people.
Yeah. The first Sofar show that I attended was the Amnesty show.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite
September
shows. That was probably my top two
2016.
shows.
The first month in Bombay for me, I just applied to Sofar. And I wrote this message about, I just moved in, I'm so excited to be in Bandra. and like I get in the first time and I had to get a +1. I got this guy.
Yeah.
Oh, both of you were at that show?
Yeah, it was my first
Wow.
Sofar show. And we walked in,
Man.
and then Arul does his usual intro of Sofar, whatever. How many of y'all are here for the first time?
Blah, blah, blah.
And I just raised my hand, and I was like, okay, this is a normal thing. And then he's like, how many of you guys have applied like 3, 5, 10, 20 times? And people are raising their hands, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh shit.
Yeah,
And which is amazing to see that
That's less
It was
actually,
nuts.
right?
over
Yeah.
that much time you sort of build this audience who respected the show and respected
Absolutely.
the people who were involved.
And that was like always a priority for us.
Right.
Like, everybody needs to fully respect what everybody else does. The artists need to respect the audience for the respect and the attention that they're giving, taking time out of their day, applying a month in advance, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So they're more appreciative of like those kind of audiences than somebody who's having dinner at a bar, of course.
Yeah.
And audiences respect the artists, the team respects the artists and what they're doing, the team respects the audience. So it was always built on that foundation of everybody is trying to do the absolute best. And if there are hiccups here and there, then very understanding people all around.
Yeah.
But that was one of the finest shows that I've ever done.
Yeah.
It was Achind and Khan brothers' first
Yeah,
and only
yeah,
performance.
yeah.
They've never
Amazing.
played since. That was Land's last performance with that lineup.
I heard those
So-
folk musicians actually came down from Rajasthan in a train.
They came from
Right before the show,
a
right?
village near Jaisalmer.
Okay.
So I'm gonna give away a bit of a spoiler. One of them was the wrong Khan brother. Because the actual one got like diarrhea and he couldn't come, so he's like, "Yo, I'm sending my uncle." We're like, "Just fucking just send a
As
Khan.
long as he's a Khan.
Just send a Khan. Like nobody here knows which one is which. Like just make sure you sell the old guy." And they're like, "Yeah, old guy's coming." We're like, "All right, cool, no problem."
What?
Yeah. So they go ahead.
And we totally thought it was.
They're like, yeah, Khan brothers, yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like, why would you suspect any differently? One of them was the wrong one. He's not the one on the record. But I mean, they're all fantastic.
Yeah.
And Achint had met them at like a folk music festival and gone and visited their village and really developed a relationship with them. And I'd been talking to him for a while, saying, we're gonna do like this really special show, and I think it'll be cool if we guys we could do it with that lineup.
Yeah.
And so they came by, I think, bus. It was bus to Jaisalmer and then train to Bombay. And they rehearsed the night before.
Yeah.
They hadn't met until the night before
Right.
that performance. They hadn't met.
Oh, so there was sort of impromptu the whole
It
thing.
was they just one rehearsal.
What?
Yeah, and
Pros, man.
and they came and performed that day.
Yeah.
That's one of the finest performances
Too
I've
good,
seen
too good. That
out of
was
so far.
intense.
So your story, so you said like, people applied 5 times, 6 times and
Yeah.
stuff. So how do you deal with like audience outrage? Because I remember during when Damien Rice was here,
Yeah.
my Instagram stories were like filled with people just tagging Sofar and they're like, yo man, I didn't get a ticket. You're giving it to
man.
random people.
Well, yes,
People are
that's the
going
point.
crazy. Like,
So early on, that wasn't a problem. Like 100 people apply, 80 people got tickets. It was all good. But yes, that's something that was increasing a problem into our second year. Like we had 60 to 80 spots per show, and there were as many as 1,500 people applying. So it was hard to initially, like, you kind of felt bad when somebody wrote into you saying, hey, all I really want to see is music, and like you guys are being elitist or whatever. We knew that wasn't true, and if we could take everyone, we would, but there was no way to avoid kind of feeling a certain amount of guilt associated with it. But that wears off. It's like a somewhat problem, man. Like, because like at the end of the day, you can't be entitled to shit, right? And like if you're like, I need to be here, it's like, no, you don't, And we've had musicians write in, it's like, oh, we'd love to play a Sofar, and we reviewed them. We had an internal review team which would listen to all their music, and we concluded that it wasn't a good fit for a variety of reasons. And we wrote in back to them saying, we don't think this is a good time, but like if you have more music coming out in the future, send that to us again and we'll review it again. And they're like, I was Rolling Stone #1 this month of this. I was like, dude, I don't care. Like, I look like Rolling Stone to you. Like, like that's the thing. Like that sense of entitlement we wiped clean from the team. If I said no +1s, everybody was like, I must be a reason for that, and didn't question it. Maybe it's a small venue, maybe whatever the reasons are. When we said that something needed to be done a certain way, it was done that way. If we told an audience this is a non-BYOB show, non-BYOB.
Oh, yeah.
We told an artist we just can't do a big setup for this show, you have to strip it down, they do it. And that was very important to us. And like that had to apply to the audience too. It's like, and we would send periodically messages to people who were writing in, the people who wrote politely and asked, what is the system? To them we would explain, this is the system, this is why it takes so long, please keep applying, and at some point you will get in, but this is why. And there are ways that we could alleviate this. One is by doing more shows a month, or by doing bigger shows. We don't want to do bigger shows for this reason, and we don't want to do more shows because we feel like we'd compromise quality at this point. So this is why we're stuck in this position. But I'm sorry. And every once in a while, like I would, in the first year I had exhausted all my +1s. Like my friends all came for a show one time, girlfriends came for a show like one time, and I just never had a +1. So if there was someone who was like really upset and written in, I just like, you know what, you're my +1.
Oh, nice.
Come to the show. And just that personal touch of being like, I care. It's not that I'm not upset that a lot of people are missing out on something that they really want to be a part of. But there's only so much I can do, and if there's something I can do about it, I'd do it. But it was that sort of thing.
So something that's really exciting to all visual artists and designers is to sort of work on Sofar and create a poster for the gig, which is really special because no one knows who the artists are, and you get to work on this project and sort of be part of it. So what was it like to create this huge packaging around the show? Yes, there's programming, there's web venue, there's also the team that's involved, but there's also like other sort of factors that you'll do.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of just came to me subconsciously. I honestly didn't even think about it. At the start, I was just like, hey, it'll be cool. Wouldn't it be cool if we had like a different poster each time? And we just did that. And then like the first 2 or 3 months, we realized that we'd gone to 3 different people for each one. First, because the first time we did one was Mrinali Kamath. She was unavailable, she moved. So we went to someone else. And that person was like, oh, I can't do it this month. We went to someone else. Then we realized that we'd had 3 completely different identities sort of interpret that lineup and that show in a cool way. So like, let's just keep this going as long as we can.
Right,
And
yeah.
it kept going.
Yeah, and some
Didn't stop.
stellar pieces, not
Yeah.
only in Bombay, but like all across India now. You see, like, oh, this poster is made by this one. Oh, that's a.
Yeah, and what I really like about that is that caught on.
Yeah.
Because like
Right.
a lot of cities don't do that abroad. But
Right.
because like us in Bangalore were sort of the first cities to keep going, like the cities that we sort of fostered after that, Delhi, Chennai, Calcutta, Hyderabad, all Kochi, Jaipur, Shillong, all of these cities, they sort of saw what we were doing and sort of replicated that model, and it works.
Right, yeah.
So, that led to an even larger body of work, which of course Moini is documented really well
Yeah.
on the Indian Poster Archive. But, there's a lot of really cool stuff. Like I love, of course I love what you did, which was with the Brigu Sani show.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
believe. That was really cool. I love Tarika's twin posters. She did it for our
Yeah.
first anniversary.
Yeah, shout out Tarika John.
Shout out Tarika
Follow
John.
alumni.
So Tarika did. So we did two shows back-to-back days, and she did like a kind of a poster that was sort of like belonged in the same universe, and you could kind of like hold them together and stuff like that.
Right.
It was really cool. So, and yeah, we just kept doing that, and fortunate enough to have worked with a lot of illustrators and designers, and Anirudh, of course, you, Vibhav, Moini, Tarika, so there was another one, Daku Jaising.
Yeah.
He did one. There was so many people I didn't know.
Right.
I didn't know of this entire world of creative people that were coming up. Like I had a couple of friends who went to design school and stuff like that after school.
Right.
But it really helped open up this whole other creative world for me that I didn't know, and it was counterintuitive. Unlike Sofar, where I kind of had expertise and knowledge of music and no network, I kind of worked the other way around with like design and illustration, where I suddenly developed a really cool network.
Yeah.
And then sort of really started understanding the craft and what they did.
Yeah, and the process.
And the
behind
process
it,
and everything, their problems, their struggles, and all of that stuff. So yeah, I'm really happy to have met a lot of those people.
Yeah, and I guess it also gives Sofar itself like this personality.
Yeah.
Like the art just adds to it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Instead of there just being this very individual.
Yeah, and it's all part of that high quality that we were going for from the start.
Yeah.
If it seems like we have like commissioned artwork for like each show from high caliber great artists,
Yeah.
that only bleeds in to the public perception of what Sofar is.
Yeah.
And of course we were all volunteers, and that helps when you're talking to someone. If I go to someone who's higher profile than me or whatever, and I say, hey, this is for you, you do whatever you want, we'll give you minimal changes or feedback or whatever, just you should be proud of what you got to make.
Right.
And this is what the music's going to be like. Here's some links to their music. This is what the venue's going to be like. Here's some pictures. Just do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And that gives them sort of the freedom to try to do something new. A lot of times artists and illustrators are trying to find ways to express themselves creatively in work that they do.
Yeah.
But often in commercial work and things like that, you don't really get that much leeway. Right. So we were able to give that to them, and in exchange we got all this amazing art, this huge body of work.
So over the last few years, there have been a lot of new ventures like Beatmap and Living.
Yeah.
So has them coming into the scene kind of changed how you work, or?
It changed how I work, not at all. Like it didn't bother us at all. But like in the right at the start, I was curious. Why are you doing the same thing? Of course, it wasn't the exact same thing. Of course, the lineups weren't secret and so on and so forth. But I always felt like there was room for innovation in the music space. A lot of bands would come to me, it's like, oh, we had such a great time, we'd like to do this again. And I'd be like, do it yourself. Like you literally, like we did a show in a garage
Yeah.
Garage 52 in Bandra, and one of the bands they played was like this sick. I'd love to do another one of these shows. I was like, you could just call Joshua, right?
Yeah.
The guy who runs the
exactly,
garage,
yeah.
and we didn't have to sell him anything. We just told him, hey, we want to do like this cool thing. This is how we do it. This is how it works. And he was like, cool. You can do the same thing.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it really doesn't. Sure, there comes a certain amount of finesse and polish from having done it a lot, but it's
Right,
really
right.
not hard to do it yourself for the first time,
Yeah,
especially
right.
if you are the sole focus and you're doing it for yourself.
Right.
But over time, I felt like, on the whole, it was a positive thing because it sort of, the more people reinforcing good audience values
Right.
and attentive listening and shining a light on artists who don't otherwise have platforms to go on, it's good.
Yeah.
I just, we were obviously operating on a different level with, of course, there comes the whole global perception of it with us
Yeah.
being connected to this massive worldwide community.
right.
And these are all, local players.
Yeah.
And of course, that limits the kind of artists they
Yeah.
can work with and things like that. I mean, I've hosted like a living show in my house. So like I'm not like like
Were you just trying to fuck with them?
no, I mean, there's a story, but that's for off camera. But no, it's like I want to help, man. Like, and honestly, you see a little bit of yourself in what all these people are doing, because like when I started out, there was nothing like this, right? So it was new and strange and difficult, and obviously all people who mean really well have good intentions. You could see them make mistakes, but unless somebody's paying me, I don't like telling people their mistakes.
So
I feel like there's a place for everybody, and like theirs is a more open mic type. Beatmap in particular has a more open mic type format,
Right.
and not necessarily like a performance type thing, which there's of course room for. More open mics the better. Living is now trying to focus on, I think, tours and tying up with artists in particular to do things, which is also
Yeah.
perfectly
Yeah.
fine. But it's not what we did.
Who
Yeah,
did like a tour, right?
yeah. Tejas and Encore did one. I
Yeah.
think Ramya did one. Whatever. But like my point is that you could do that, but like that's not what we were doing.
Yeah, but it also
Our-
helps incubate this culture of respect for musicians.
Absolutely.
As opposed to going to a venue where you're probably at the bar talking to a bunch of people and then, oh, okay, there's a band. It sort of changes that
and
sort of attitude.
like at the start, I was like, oh, that's competition. But later on, I was like, no, we inspired that.
Right.
And if more people want to do what we do, the better.
Right.
On the whole,
Yeah.
and like the only thing that's keeping you from seeing that is your ego. And right at the start, I was like, why are you doing this? Why are you stepping on my toes? Like, I do this is my thing.
Right.
It's not like it's not a new idea. Bed hooks have been in India for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Right.
White
Yeah.
people didn't invent that shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like, do what you want, man. Like, as long as I was sure that I was doing something on a completely different level in terms of quality,
Right.
it didn't bother me, and that remained true. So
So Arul, you also run this record label called Critical.asia.
it's not a record label.
Then?
So Critical sort of was born out of me wanting a vehicle for my personal work. So I knew for a little while now that I wanted to step away from Sofar, mainly because I was moving. I was going to Paris, which I am at the end of this month.
Right.
And opportunities started arising rapidly after I left Deloitte. So basically around April 2018, I quit my job. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to figure out how I can keep afloat and do things in just the music business without having to do all of that stuff.
Okay.
And at the start, there was a couple of consulting gigs, like the ITC Maratha wanted some like programming events and stuff at their venue. I was like, okay, cool, money. Revolver Club wanted me to do their record store day, the catalog and promotions and events at the store and so on and so forth.
Okay.
We worked together on that
Yeah.
as well. So it was a bunch of like consulting type gigs
Okay.
that were coming my way. People that kind of they had a perception of what my eyes and ears were, and what kind of attention to detail and taste I had, and they wanted to sort of use that, and that was cool. But then, oddly enough, artists started reaching out to me about management.
Okay.
3 bands reached out, and I was like, I'm not a manager. Like, I don't even know how to do this job.
Right.
But that changed when Sid asked me, because Sid and I have a very special relationship, and we've known each other for a few years now.
Right.
And
Okay.
we're very similar people in terms of our mental makeup and our tastes and the way we approach our careers and lives and all of that. So it just felt like less like a manager job and more of a, I will pay you to be invested in my career.
Right.
Right? And I was invested in his career anyway. I would do whatever for Sid, So we kind of formalized that relationship, and from then came, Kumail, Akanksha,
Right.
potentially a couple more clients that I might be signing on before I went. So Critical was kind of, I wanted, this ties into my overall approach to the creative business, that is driving value up. That's where it ties in with what I was saying about CDs earlier. It's like, people are continuously trying to drive value down. Spotify, Apple Music,
Yeah.
Netflix, whatever, you name it. They're driving value down in exchange for their own market supremacy. So, okay, we're not selling you music anymore, we're selling you the platform. It has all the music.
Yeah.
Spotify doesn't care whether your album gets streams.
Of course.
They get
Yeah.
they care how many subscribers
Yeah.
they have on a monthly basis.
Right.
And I wanted to, like, everything I do is sort of to go away from that, driving value up of design services, of music services, of mix engineering services, of
Right.
my marketing consulting services, management services, just kind of making sure we had this extremely small, concise, tight unit that was working, and people could hire us, and we could all kind of work on each other's
Right.
projects.
Everyone
So-
had their own thing to pitch into.
Absolutely. I had my understanding of the business and, understanding of how to strategize careers and things like that,
Right,
which
right.
is useful to Sid and Akanksha and Kumail.
Right.
Akanksha is, of course, a talented graphic designer. So she has a keen, she has a hand to play in everything that we do visually.
Right.
Sid will have his opinion on Kumail's album, Kumail will have his opinion on Sid's album,
Right.
and all of that, we make each other much better. But to begin with, I sort of wanted it to be more of a group thing, but we all realized eventually that was my thing. It was because it was clear that I really wanted to do
Right,
this.
like you
and-
were the driving force behind
yeah,
it. most
and
of
like
it.
before we even knew what it was, and we still don't know what it is. It was a name,
Right,
and that name came from me, and I was like, you know what, critical means important. It's integral to what you're doing, and it
Right.
also means being critical,
Right.
being in the way of critique,
Right,
and both of those things are extremely important to everything I do. I'm extremely self-critical of everything that I do. All my work, I'm sure Jayesh has seen me after perfectly fine shows looking like I'm pissed, right? Like I'm just upset. And
Yeah.
it could be for the tiniest of reasons. Like, how am I doing this for 3 years and that went wrong, right?
Yeah.
So just things like that. At the same time, when I first started out, I was writing like music reviews and things like that. So I've always had a very analytical way of looking at art.
Right.
And these are the things that I wanted to reinforce in the work that I was doing. So right now it's a management company, I'd say.
It's a management company.
Yeah. I manage Kumail, Sid, and Akanksha, and shortly maybe 1 or 2 more people. But I wanted over time to grow into a more agency type format where we you hire this idea of what critical is and what kind of influence
Right.
they can bring into your brand or your career or whatever. And we have different people on board who provide different levels of expertise
Based on
in
what they
different fields.
need, you can.
Exactly.
Okay.
But I know it's like my life's work, that this is something I want to be doing. This is a company that's going to exist in some form or the other over the course of my life. So I'm happy for it to sort of take its course and become
Right.
whatever it needs to.
And
but
it's
for
still-
now, it's like a
still very
manufacturing
young
company.
also.
Yeah, it's like
Right.
less than a year. So.
Yeah.
Sweet. But you guys are functioning in 3 countries right now, right?
Yeah. So
How are you managing the logistics for that?
So, I mean, I have a watch that has 5 time zones on it. Okay. So I work all of those time zones. So Akanksha's in New York, Sid's in Sydney, Kumail's in Bombay.
Okay.
So it's complicated and it's hard.
Right.
But, I won't have it any other way. And, I'll be moving to Paris, which will make it 4 times zones. So, but, like, we're not concerned with things that used to be problems.
Right.
It's not a problem anymore. Me and Akanksha can easily work together on branding projects, where I kind of work as strategist and she kind of does design work
Right.
from across borders. It's not hard.
Right, yeah.
Me and Sid can easily sit together on work and on music and talk about, direction and all of that stuff over FaceTime. It's not a problem.
Of course.
You know? So I really don't need to be here. On the ground with people
Right. Right.
to do what I do. And some people do, but I've found ways to kind of effectively communicate ideas and thoughts and in very short periods of time to make sure that there's no rambling and, beating around the bush, no communication gaps.
Yeah.
And that means clients are more comfortable with, working with someone abroad. Because the first thing they say is like, oh my God, like I'm going to have to deal with this designer who will only wake up at 6 p.m. India time, all that shit,
Right.
But we kind of find ways to overcome those gaps and,
Yeah.
make them comfortable, and that works.
Yeah, even like bands like Sky Harbor
Yeah.
stay in different cities,
Exactly.
three
Yeah,
different
yeah,
countries,
literally.
and they still manage to tour
Yeah.
Europe and US yearly.
Yeah.
So how are they even doing this? And internet really like
It's really it all comes down to how solid a relationship you have with your clients.
Yeah.
And like Akanksha, Kumail, and Sid are the only people who can reach me at any time of day. Right? Because like you gotta be 100% invested in what these people are doing with their
Right.
lives.
Yeah.
I'm an investor in their careers.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I'll take some off the top, but I'm putting a lot in terms of what I want them to become the fullest version of. And, I feel like I'm starting to see some results because obviously, like starting off, it was just like a inner conviction that, oh, I can do this. I know what I'm doing. But like about 6 months in, you're like, I'm not completely sure I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right? But like over time, you start seeing, some things pan out and things like that. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
I have the right idea.
Congratulations on the Kamasi show,
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, man.
Thank you. Kumail's opening for Kamasi, Washington end of this
which
month.
is huge. I
That's
mean,
later
for-
this month, by the way. And if you got a ticket, you're very lucky.
Yeah, thank you.
And he also signed a record deal with Bastard Jazz in New York.
Right, yeah.
Last week, which is something I've been working on for like months.
Right.
First offer came in like May, and till since then I've just been negotiating, lawyers, all of that stuff. So a lot of things that I wanted to do things that these people didn't think was possible for them.
Yeah.
Kind of like help them realize that there are a lot of different things possible.
Yeah.
Could you talk about like some lesser known roles of an artist manager?
Like especially when it comes to like copyrights and royalties.
Definitely.
Like
Yeah.
I've heard some really horrific stories when it comes to royalties.
I
Some that
may
maybe
be
we
the
couldn't talk
primary
about.
source of those. Yeah, like you may have heard it from someone I was talking to.
So
Yeah, I mean, those are not like lesser known
Right.
roles for
Okay.
a manager. Maybe here, because a lot of people, like, for the most part, there are a lot of booking agents that focus on live shows as a revenue stream for the artists. But I felt like, at least with my artists, it was saturating their visibility. The more Kumail plays in Bombay month after month, the less people want to see him, the less different his shows can be. And so we had to kind of strategize ways to make sure that he wasn't playing as much but not hurting, for money.
Right.
And there's a variety of ways to do that, whether that's working in advertising or working with films or making sure your royalties numbers are good, so on and so forth. I'd say the most important role of a manager is sort of like a therapist, because there is a severe lack of feedback systems in this country. Music journalism doesn't exist. There's a massive PR machinery, and that's it. You can I can like burp into this microphone for like 60 minutes, put it out tomorrow, and somebody will be like, in India's James Blake puts out wow record. And it's, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? Like, are you guys even listening to this shit? You know?
Yeah, true.
So they need that, and that can sort of like confuse an artist, because like, am I actually good, or are all these people just saying this?
Saying it,
Like, it's hard to gauge what's real. So you kind of have to be that for them. You're like, no, this sucks, or oh, this is really good. Don't give up on it just because people aren't listening to this right now, and things like that. And you know, all of that self-doubt, all of that fear of uncertainty, of, you know, finances and future, and audiences are fickle and things like that. You kind of have to make sure that their minds are off those things, so they can, you know, create freely.
Right. But don't you also worry that there's only so much for a musician to be able to sustain themselves? Like, they have to do X number of shows, or be able to...
Yeah, but there are smart ways of doing that.
Right.
You know, like, if we do a couple of private shows a month, we're good.
We're good, yeah.
If we live right,
Yeah.
if we make good decisions. But, you know, it's all about doing what you can with your means. And if you're trying to live the lifestyle that you lived when your parents were paying for you, then you're going to be hurting for money.
Yeah,
But,
sure.
you know, if you're sort of trying to develop your own lifestyle and live within your means, there are ways, and it's perfectly possible to make rent, have, you know, good amount of money left over to buy things for yourself, and gear and all of that. It's possible, but you have to be strategic about it. You have to be able to look at your expenses at the end of the month and say, what am I spending on? If it's Ubers, walk more. Take the train. Leave 2 hours early. Take the bus. Right? Like, for you, you have to think about always what... I am always making a choice. Right? When people say I'm broke, they're not really broke.
Yeah.
What they
Just make
mean
bad
is
choices.
what they mean is that I can't afford the lifestyle that I want to live. Right?
Right.
Interesting, yeah.
So being aware of that I could just downgrade my lifestyle and suddenly I'm not broke anymore, because I just afford all the things that I want. So just being in tune with, you know, those things, and understanding, you know, where corners can be cut, where your life can be changed to a more meaningful and, you know, wholesome way, that's important. And that's something I kind of work with my artists on a lot, to make sure that they understand that this is a long game and I'm in it with them.
Right.
I'm not going anywhere. So if you think you're broke right now, I'm X% of broke. Right?
Yeah.
So like,
but also having a voice that tells you that, you
Yeah.
know, like, that's constantly reminding you that, hey, you're here.
yeah.
This is where you are really, and this is how you could make it better.
Exactly, and you know that's, you know, I think that record deal for Kumail was like a morale victory.
Right,
you know,
yeah.
for him to feel like, oh, okay, like he took a huge risk leaving his previous management.
Right.
You know, going with a completely new direction with his music for the record,
And not performing. for
signing
quite a
on
bit
to
too.
an
Yeah.
you know, with an unknown independent manager with no experience.
Yeah.
And you know, like, these are huge risks, but
Yeah.
he did it based on what he felt was gonna work, and it did. So it was, for both of us, you know, a moral victory, really.
Right.
But that's the thing, you have to consistently take risks to do something that other people aren't doing. If you're not doing that, you are destined to repeat their cycles.
Right.
So I'm always watching what other people are doing, what mistakes they're making, you know, what they could have done better, like with the beatmap and lvng and all these people. Like, I'm always paying attention.
Right,
Right.
you're aware of it.
I'm aware of everything. You know, you have to have your ears to the streets, know what's going on, so you don't have to make their mistakes.
So this is something I've been thinking about for a while. For an independent musician to like make money, like playing live is probably the only source, because nobody's buying music anymore. People are on Spotify. You get like a monthly subscription. How are you really making money off of the music that you're making?
So you have to firstly be aware of what your royalties are, because sometimes they aren't as low as you think. You know, because I mean, I think you know what I'm talking about, but like, I've been in a situation where people sort of had access to funds that were rightfully ours, and we weren't seeing them, and it took a significant amount of me digging and figuring out what the trail was to realize that there was actually money there that was enough to sort of like make rent.
Right.
Right? So definitely don't underestimate royalties. Yes, it's not as much as it used to be when people would buy CDs and all, but if you're getting a certain amount of streams a month, if you get playlisted well, you're, sort of play the game right, when you're releasing an album, speak to Apple Music, speak to Savan, speak to people who are in charge of playlists at these places, you can get a significant amount of hits and a significant amount of royalties off of that. So it's extremely important to kind of have all your eggs in order.
Okay.
And also identify revenue streams. Okay, this is public performances, right? These are my venues, clubs, festivals, things like that.
Right.
Private performances, do not underestimate those. If you think you're not ready and you don't have opportunities, you're just not talking to enough people.
Okay.
You can get private performances, they pay much better, and think of it like a job. You go there, you do your thing, nobody's listening, that's fine. I am doing this for what I'm doing, right? Private performances are important. For certain genres of music, there's a market with college performances that is very big and very lucrative.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a very good way to pay your bills. Then there is tangential sources of income, like if you have advertising, you work with jingles and things like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of music producers, like electronic music producers, do that. A lot of instrumentalists do that. They work as session musicians. So like somebody like Warren will obviously do a lot of guitar session work.
Right.
Reese or Ryan will do a lot of sax session work. Ajay will do a lot of violin session work. It's important. Always kind of keep an eye out on who could possibly need me and how do I become the first person they call. Right? Because if you think, oh, there's already 4 other people who do this, why would they want me? That's the question you need to answer. Right?
Yeah.
If you think that that's not the answer that the person you want to go to currently has, you have to figure out how to change that. Whether that comes from building a relationship or working from the ground up with someone who's starting as a music producer, we've worked with some video producers who do ads and stuff. We work with them on their like first ads. So they kind of come to us now. We're like their go-to people.
Right.
You have to become the go-to person for as many people as possible. There's a college program guy who sort of like colleges call up these companies, like there's Eminence and there's a couple of other booking companies. They call them as like, who you want? And they're like, okay, here's the plate. There's Benny Dayal, Pentagram, Parikrama, what do you want? Right? Like they do that, right? I mean, it's all in the game. How do you get on that plate? How do you find out the guy who is in charge of putting people on plates? Right?
Right.
You have to play that game. You can't just wait for them to come looking for you. Can't do that.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest misconception with anything, like musicians, artists, designers.
Absolutely.
I have a bunch of
Anything.
people. I've been freelancing for over a year now, and
Yeah.
I'll get a lot of questions. It'll be like, how have you been doing this?
Yeah.
But it's also been years of working at homegrown, networking with so many people,
Yep.
talking to so many people, telling them again and again that I exist.
Yeah.
I'm still doing this, what I'm doing. And then they hit you up later and they're like, hey, I've worked with you before.
Yeah.
And everything's good, so why don't we just take this forward?
Exactly.
And it really matters, like, if you don't pick up their call once,
Yeah.
that already sets a bad impression. Like, keeping those little things
100%.
in place, like,
and
really.
kind of knowing who's useful. I mean, like, yes, it's good to be personable and treat people with a personal touch and all of that. But you also have to know who's useful and who isn't.
Yeah.
And kind of the problem is that human beings evolved over the last few 100,000 years. For 90% of that time, we lived our entire lives in like a 10-mile radius,
Right.
around like 30 people. That was the whole thing,
Right.
right? So we're not wired to know thousands of people on our Instagrams or Facebooks or whatever.
Right.
We're not wired to deal with knowing everything about their lives and being in constant touch with them.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of understand that limitation in the evolution of your brain and try to minimize that. Okay, who are my 20 people? Who's my tribe
Right,
or
right.
family or my pack?
Right.
And kind of make sure that they remain as close to you as you would if you were living out in the savannah with them.
Right.
Because your mind is tailored to deal with only that many people on that level. If you try to deal with thousands of people on that level, you're going to half-ass it. It's not going to work. So you need to find being able to deal with people on that level, a certain number of them, and the rest of them like a baseline level where it's just enough and nothing more than that. And it's the same thing with like what you asked me earlier about people writing in rejection emails for Sofar, upset and all of that. They're all baseline level people. I don't care. I care, but just enough.
Right.
I can't care as much as I care about Kumail, about
Right.
everybody.
Right.
Like it's just
And fair enough.
yeah. I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
It's physically impossible. It's medically, sociologically impossible. So just being aware of that is extremely important. Yeah, I forgot what your question was, but that's the answer.
So Arul, tell me, if someone has made a track and he wants to put it out, what's the first sort of way? How do you even go about copywriting your music?
So there's a couple of things that are important to keep in mind. One is, as soon as you made something, you have the copyright on it. Like, you don't need a piece of paper to prove that. As long as you need to prove, you are able to prove that you made a recording of this, or you wrote it, or any sort of evidence that you came up with this, that's enough, sufficient to prove that you have the copyright over that. Now, there's a number of different types of copyrights once you make a song. One is the rights over the recording itself. So if I make a song, say I make Despacito, right? I wrote the song, so I have that copyright, the composition copyright. There's also another one called the recording copyright. So say I make Despacito with like a Daddy Yankee or whoever, and like there's that recording. Every time that recording gets played by someone, that's my right. They have to pay me.
Right.
I can re-record that same song in a completely different arrangement and all of that with a different band. And that is a completely separate copyright. They both derive from the compositional copyright, but they both have different recording copyrights.
Right.
Which is why when people sample music these days, a lot of them recreate samples. So they're not violating two rights, just violating one. The one that's harder to prove, right? Because say if I use like a snippet from a TV show, say it's Sopranos, and I use it in my song, people will easily be able to tell that this is directly lifted from a line from the Sopranos. It's the same recording that's been placed in here.
Right.
So that's easy to sue. But if I do my best impression of Tony Soprano, they have to sort of jump through some legal loopholes to prove that they're infringing on their creative copyright, which they tend to not really give a shit about. That's fine. Go and do that. Right? So it's important to know that you always have your creative copyright, your composition copyright, but know what your recording rights bundles are in terms of if you're working with a label. Sometimes they claim co-ownership of your music.
Right.
So what a label deal usually works like is that, okay, we're going to fund you. We're going to pay for the recording of your album. We're going to pay for PR of your album. We're going to pay on physical production if you're doing vinyl or CDs or whatever. And we're going to pay for mastering. But in exchange, all the money that starts coming in, we'll take all of it until all of that is recouped.
Right.
And then after that, we will share a certain predetermined percentage of that. Right? So that means that they have percentage points on your publishing. Your publishing is your recording copyright, the way it makes money. Right? So that means that you are no longer sole owner of your
own music
rights on the songs, which is what happened to Taylor Swift recently. She signed a couple of record deals when she was young and stupid. Scooter Braun owns all her music now. Michael Jackson owned all of Beatles music before he died.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Every time Beatles song gets paid, Michael Jackson gets paid.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Exactly. So it's, at least in today's day and age, it's more important to kind of take more and more control of your music, because back in the day you didn't really have a choice. In order to really get your music out there, make sure it was stocked in all the stores, make sure you had billboards, all of that stuff, you were making Top of the Pops or whatever TV show, Jules Holland, you had to sign to a label. They are the ones who really had that muscle and that reach. Now you don't really have to do that. And if you do, it needs to be a far more even affair. Back then, you would make as little as 15% of your own music revenue. 85 would go to the label, because they were spending so much on manufacturing, distribution, all of that. Now they just need to upload. So why are you taking 85% again? Right? So it's important to know, if you're signing a distribution deal, record deal, anything like that, What is the percentage? Why is it so high? Negotiate it constantly, as high as you could physically get it,
Right.
because that music is yours. Don't be afraid to sue. Don't be afraid to reach out to people who've used your music without consent and send them a notice that take it down.
Yeah.
But then
Even
does
if it's
that
a-
mean you need to be like in touch with a lawyer at all points, or can you sort of just
Honestly, usually a threat is fine. Nobody wants to go to court.
Yeah.
And if they think you're ready to go to court, they're like, oh my God, I don't want to go to court. So you need to give them the impression that you're ready to go to court over this, as small as it may be.
Right.
Somebody uses your music on like a fashion campaign or something. It's like, hey, you're selling these clothes.
Right.
You're making money in some way or the other off my music.
right?
I need to be paid a fair share of that. And if I'm not, I will make sure that's dealt with. Whether that's in court of public opinion, whether it's demanding crediting, demanding an upfront fee, threatening to sue, number of ways you can go about it.
So can someone just be sitting in like a living room and copyright their music through like just net or
Yeah, I
or-
mean, there are certain organizations, like there's a copyright association in India,
Right.
but it's a little complicated because each country sort of has its own association.
Hmm.
But what I would recommend is signing up with your local royalty collection organization, like there's the IPRO in India. So what they do is that they have blanket deals with companies, with TV companies, with cafes who play music. Technically, any cafe or restaurant that's playing music needs to be paying for that.
Okay.
Right.
You can't just play it off like a local personal Apple Music subscription.
Yeah.
That's illegal.
Yeah.
They have to be paying a certain amount of money to the royalty collection organization. The
In
royalty
India?
collection organization in India is not as structured. In America, yes,
Okay.
and most other developed countries, yes. But again, if you find your music being played anywhere and you didn't know about it, that's a problem.
Oh.
Anywhere, every time music gets played, somebody gets paid.
Right.
You need to make sure that's you.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Somebody's getting paid. They play music at a restaurant, they're getting paid. Maybe not for the music, but for someone who stayed half an hour longer in that cafe, they'll have one more cup of coffee because it's actually kind of nice here. Right?
Right.
That is your money. So everything that you do, make sure you have paperwork in order, contract folders, everything that's signed. Try to find a lawyer to look over all your contracts.
Right.
There are affordable lawyer options who will do media and entertainment law for relatively affordable costs, and make them look over all your contracts, make sure everything is clean before you sign anything. Never feel pressured to sign something. If you ever feel like, if I don't sign this right now, they'll take this offer away from me, it's not a good offer. They're trying to fuck you.
Right.
If you say, I need a week to go over this with my lawyer and get back to you, and they say you don't have a week, it's not a good offer.
Right.
If anybody is trying to keep you from seeing a lawyer before signing a deal, it's
And there's
not a good
something.
deal.
Yeah.
Fishy. Mm.
I've fucked enough people to know that's true. Right? Because that's the thing, like, this is business.
Right.
And the less somebody else gets paid, the more you can keep for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's up to you also. If you want to do that, you can do that. But you got to make sure that if you're doing it to someone, somebody will be doing it to you. And you got to make sure that you're always on the positive side of that.
Right. So this as well falls under the blanket of an artist manager's job, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. I'm constantly speaking to distributors, speaking to past management, people like that, making sure all the money is in place. Not a single dime with somebody who doesn't need to have it.
Right. So I like the fact that on your on the Box Out show, like the songs can be of anywhere, like any genre. Like you play
Yeah.
a classical piece and then you play something else. Right?
Yeah.
So I want you to somehow give me a story of how that happened. Like where is that coming from? Like
Yeah, I mean, I initially first pitched a show to Box Out like last year. I reached out to Abhi Mir and DJ Mo City, and I reached out to them and I told them, hey, I have this idea for like a hip hop show. I have this idea for like an old 60s, 70s soul, funk, gospel show.
Okay.
And I had this other third idea. I was like, pick one, And they were like, a lot of people are already doing this. Can you tweak this a little bit and get back to us? And I just didn't reply to their email for like 10 months. And then Abhi reached out to me and he's like, hey, you want to do a show? I was like, yeah. They're like, okay, cool. Basically, it. They're like, can you give us a name?
The first one that I heard of yours was the Chai.
The Chai and Chill thing. Yeah, that was the first time that he's like, hey, you want to do like a guest mix first?
Yeah,
and I was like, yeah, sure. And so Abhi was like, yeah, just give me a name and like come up with a vibe. But I recommend you try and do like a vocal-based show where you're introducing music and talking about the music and not just like a mix, right?
Right.
And that was definitely up my alley. That's something I wanted to do, and that's something I enjoy doing even in person. You know, someone's in my house or something, I play them a record. It's like, oh, you should listen to this.
Right.
I found this at this store, and you know, this person also played on this, but he played on that Miles Davis record.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
So on and so forth. You know, just kind of like really getting into the context and history of you know this piece of music.
Yeah.
And as far as like the programming was concerned, I found myself over the past few years listening to a lot of foreign language music, because you know I'd listened to so much American and British music growing up that like I get it. Right?
Yeah.
Like this, you would just find newer versions of that. You know, underground bands that maybe had only one album and things like that. Yeah. But I was desperate for that Linkin Park in the end feeling. It's like, this is something else entirely. And that's something that I discovered as I started collecting records. Because, you know, I would buy records and I'd be like, oh, this is cool, listen to it, it's fantastic, Google it, it's nowhere. It's not on streaming, it's not, you can't download it, it's nowhere. These albums are lost to time. Because the labels that published them and, you know, pressed them on vinyl or whatever in the 60s and 70s, those labels are gone now, the master tapes are gone, the archives are gone. This is all that's left. So in that sense, I kind of saw it also as an opportunity to kind of archive 20th century music from around the world, because a lot of it was just as good as, you know, American or British music that you end up listening to when you think 60s, 70s. You know, there's Pink Floyd, and Led Zeppelin, Beatles, all of that shit. But you know, there were fantastic bands in like Somalia.
Yeah, true.
It's just that nobody heard
Ethiopia,
them.
man.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of focus on.
Right. So for the uninitiated, Arul has his own box art show every Thursday.
First Thursday of every month.
First Thursday of every month.
It's called the Handsomest Man in the World. I'm actually going to be doing. I don't know if I should mention this yet because it's not done. But like there may be a version of this show on a streaming service in kind of podcast type form. Coming soon.
Sweet.
But like it's
Exclusive one for
yeah, I'll let you guys know. Yeah.
Sweet.
So, I mean, at the end of it, something that all of us, at least the whole crew, have massive respect for you is that you've been sober for over
2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. It's also takes a lot of courage, and it also reflects a lot on your character and the way you sort of prioritize your time. So, or was that something to do with dealing with some mental health problems? Was that?
Yeah, it was a combination of things. One is that I was drinking very heavily throughout college, and even after I moved back and was working here, I was working, you know, what was essentially 2 jobs. And that, you know, it takes its toll, and you find solace wherever you find it. And I just felt like at the time when I was younger, it was like, it seems like the most obvious way to deal with a problem, right? Like your problem is you don't know how to hang out with people. You go out drinking, you don't know how to talk to like a girl.
Yeah.
Go out for drinks, like losing it up, whatever. And I also at some point over the years realized that I needed help with my mental health. You know, relationships suffered and crumbled. My relationships with my family was strained. I was uncomfortable and suffering a lot, and I realized that I have to do something. This is not tenable. So I went and, you know, got help, and it was great. You know, I was put on medication. You know, I've been in therapy ever since. But initially, I quit sort of drinking and drugs and things like that because of the medication. You can't mix those two things. You die immediately. But, you know, now I'm no longer on that medication that it keeps me from drinking, but I still don't drink because I'm like, why?
Right.
Why should I do that?
You've sort of gone much beyond that.
No, it's like I value the clarity of thought that I have. It's what I enjoy about being alive.
Right.
You know, thinking through things and, you know, seeing things clearly and experiencing people and meeting them, things like that. Why should I compromise that? For what exactly? It was just an overall realization in my life that I wanted to slowly cut out things that didn't make me happy or that didn't serve a purpose. If I had something that I felt obligated to do, I thought through that. Am I really obligated to do this thing? If so, why? Am I truly in control of whether or not I do this thing? And if all the answers are good, then I do it. But if there is a gap there that I don't know why I feel obligated, is it social pressure or fear or anxiety or whatever, I would make attempts consciously to make sure I wasn't doing those things.
Right.
And part of that was, just sobriety. It's just like I genuinely can't think of a reason to do it anymore.
Right.
The first 6 months are hard, 6 months to a year. You feel left out. You go to a wedding, go to a party, everybody's having a great time. You could feel like, the only guy drinking Diet Coke. It's not great.
Yeah.
But it blows over so fast. Like, I honestly don't even think about it anymore. It's not even a thing. And not to say that I'll never drink again. I might. But now I'm in control.
Right.
Like, 3 years from now, I'll be maybe at my own wedding. I'll be like, I'm going to have a glass of wine tonight.
Right.
And I'll do it. And I won't feel bad about that.
Yeah, because you're on
that I
your
broke
own
my
terms.
sobriety streak or something like that. I don't care. I don't care about it either way. And that's the power, right?
Right.
The power is not sobriety. I will never drink again.
Power is clarity.
It's just I
And
might.
having that choice.
I might. I might not.
Yeah.
I don't care. It doesn't control the way I make decisions.
Right.
So I think, especially in music and in most creative fields, there's sincere, like a huge problem with mental health. Try to get as many people into therapy as possible. I tell people it's like going to the dentist. It's like a lot of people, like the first thing people ask me, I'm pretty vocal about it. So most people ask me is like, how did you know that it was time to go to therapy the first time you went? I was like, you don't know.
Yeah.
Right? And like you go to a dentist because you go to a dentist. You don't go only because your tooth is aching.
Yeah.
You just go for like a regular checkup. There's nothing wrong with you. They're like, all right, cool, get out of here. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Just make sure you're like mentally checked in with what you're doing. And it's a learning process. It's also education. The more you're in therapy, the more you learn to not have to go. Like deal with things the correct way.
Right. And start having those conversations with yourself.
Yeah. Just
I think
working through things on your own.
People also perceive going to therapy or something as negative.
Yeah, of course. There's a
which is
generational
Like a taboo attached to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or you are wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Something's wrong. with
which
that.
is why I do whatever I can to sort of make sure that that's not the case.
Yeah.
Like if I'm at a bar and somebody's like, "Oh, why don't you drink?" I'll be like, "I'm mad depressed." I'll just tell them that. I'm on so many meds I can't drink.
It's the
but
same as telling someone I have a cold or I have a fever.
Exactly that. Exactly that.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't be ashamed, it's like I can't smoke. I have a cold. I was gonna fuck my throat out.
Yeah, then everyone's like, oh.
Then everyone's like, all right, cool, that makes sense. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So just being open about it, making sure that everybody sees that you're a regular ass guy. It's not like I'm like on the verge of suicide constantly.
Right.
It's regular ass people can be in therapy for their whole lives, on meds for their whole lives.
Yeah.
It's as normal as can be. The only thing is that I feel like it's an epidemic at the same time because it's influenced by the way society is structured. It's influenced by the way technology is structured, and the amount of time you spend on social media. Again, like coming back to that principle of the number of people you have around you,
Right.
and the space that you occupy in the world.
Yeah.
Just being constantly aware of that is important because the things that are compromising your mental health are those violations. Being around more people than you're ready to be around, going to more places than you're ready to go to.
Right.
All of those things are direct violations of your wiring. So some people are better at that. They can do more, be more places. Some people aren't. There's nothing wrong with that. I sometimes I don't go out for like 3 days straight. I don't feel bad about it. Initially, I was like, what's wrong with me? I want to have friends. And like, no, I still have friends. It's just that I don't want to go outside today. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And that's what's important for my comfort. How comfortable I feel being alive. And that should be your only priority. Making sure you're as comfortable as you can be. You're enjoying this ride as much as you can.
Right.
On that note, thank you so much, Arul, for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'd love for everyone to check out Arul's Box Out show and also follow Arul at Arul Kacker on Instagram.
Yeah.
Don't trouble him too much.
I will not reply.
And also, please follow us at We Are Follow on Instagram. We'd also... Sorry.
I got.
We'd also like to thank Adagio for providing us this
lovely
beautiful
space,
today to record our music-centric episode for you guys.
And before you go, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
All right.
Okay, thank you so much, Arul.
Thank you for tuning in, guys.
Thank you,
Thank you
man.
so much. Thank you, Arul.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we also have a little something
Yeah.
which I'm
Oh
just
my
gonna...
God. You're gonna make me cry. You already got me cake.
Oh, so now like this has to sort of cut between
No,
that.
it's fine. We always give our guests something to take back to remember us.
Oh my
And
God.
It's a
Yes.
little...
Oh, thank you so much.
Nishan, please do the...
Please take it to Paris.
Oh, thank you. I mean,
From us to you.
I just got my visa. I don't want to be risking this shit. It's like, hey, what are you doing? I was like, I'm just on the plane like that. And so, I'm not gonna let me into the country. But
But
thank you.
to sort of
Thank you so much.
Make a tangible memento to this experience.
Yes, this is so cool. That makes me think of that Sofar candle that's in your
Yeah.
house.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing, right? Just being able to have something to
something,
remember
yeah.
things by. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, guys. See you in the next episode.
Okay.
All right.
That was great. All right, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
much, bro. Good job.
Thank you so much, man.